Anytime you try to explore the question of just how deadly or destructive nuclear weapons are, especially in comparison to conventional weapons, there's so many different factors involved. It's very hard to give a direct answer, but you can simulate different things. And you have the aspect of destruction on civilian resources, civilian lives, loss of lives in cities and other key locations. Use a simulator like the Nuclear War Simulator to simulate that stuff. But there's the other aspect of what would be the impact on military operations and an impact for counter value or even battlefield usage, which battlefield usage is to directly affect the outcome of military operations. So if you're striking strategic weapons, in which there's a big caveat there that the difference between strategic and battlefield isn't really relative to warhead yield size. Now, there was a time where it was more directly because the strategic weapons had these higher and higher yield size counts all the way up to 25 megatons. Now, you might say Tsar Bomba with the 50 megaton test, but that was never an actual operational weapon, but there were operational aerial bombs from the United States up to 25 megatons, and the Soviets may have had an equivalent. Can't remember off the top of my head, but now that line is extremely blurred because you have theater-designed weapons, and so it's really the difference is range versus destructive capabilities. So, like in this test, using command modern operations, we are firing a what would be considered a theater level weapon, the SSC-8, with a 200 kiloton warhead. Now, having said that, there are plenty of strategic weapons with warheads of a similar yield size, or even a smaller yield size, but they're strategic in nature. So, like the United States has a very small yield warhead on some of their sub-launch ballistic missiles. It's a 6 kiloton warhead, which would be smaller than the bombs dropped during World War II. But they do not have those on a non-strategic platform. They have a strategic platform, which would be a Trident missile off a Ohio-class sub. So there's really no difference, speaking-wise, between that and, say, their warheads that are 400 kiloton warheads. Many, many times the destructive capability, but they're both off the same weapon platform. And there'd be no differentiation from whoever the target is to be able to say, hey, this is, yes, this is a strategic platform, but it's only 6 kilos. I mean, they're not going to know the difference between the two. This platform's the same. What I've done was I placed some armored vehicles. So we have some Abrams, and we also have some Bradleys. We have them placed at 1 mile intervals, 2 mile intervals, 5 mile intervals, and up to 10 mile intervals. So for instance, this is a Bradley placed 5 mile. This is the target location, which is an Abram. I didn't put any Bradley at the target location. Now, neither, realistically speaking, at ground zero, neither one of these are going to survive. In fact, take much, much less. A direct hit would take much less than a nuclear weapon to destroy them. Obviously, this would be incinerated, but let's look at what at least this model program models the destruction on these all the way out. Here's the missile with the warhead. And for reference, these are the most recent variants of the respective armored vehicles. So this would be representative of, say, a potential NATO involvement in the Ukraine conflict. Because there's a very real threat and concern that the United States has very limited theater level weapons. Basically, some bombs stationed in Europe. They're quite old, whereas Russia does have a lot of theater level nuclear weapons. So the Bradley just picked up that incoming missile. It's tracking it, but it wouldn't have any effective way of countering it. All right. So we definitely lost. Let's put this up here. We definitely lost the one Abrams. Let's go ahead and close. Let's go ahead and resume. We've definitely suffered damages. We've lost a Bradley. Lost another Abrams. Another Bradley. Another Abrams. This tracks with my suspicion. So everything with, everything 2 miles and in, it's basically effectively destroyed. Once you got out to 5 miles, they would seem to be okay. Now, these vehicles are designed to operate in a fallout radiation, area with protection. Obviously, coming through the Cold War is a very real threat that they would have to operate in those kind of environments. So you see there, 200 kiloton warhead. It's very, not a small warhead by any means. And once you get kind of 5 miles and out, really no damage to the armored vehicles. Now let's test something a little bit less. And we'll place some stuff just slightly adjusted. So let's kind of base things right around this Abrams right here. So no sense in I think we kind of know right now that 2 miles, not a hope. So we're going to go 3 miles. Just go ahead and put that one right on top of it. Then we're going to go 4 miles, so we'll go about a mile outside of that one. Oops. Apparently I was still clicked on that. Okay. Let's take this in. You're out right there, so let's just move that. So that should put us about, and that needs to come in somewhat. So, all right. Right about there. Close enough, almost dead on, 4 miles. Let's go ahead and clone the Abrams. We just put an Abrams on top of that. Now let's find something a little less sturdy. So I'm going to go insert. I'll plop something down on there. Let's throw. Let's throw a Humvee down. Right here in the middle of these two. Let's clone it, put it right there. Clone it once more. If I'm looking at about 4 miles, let's go. For 3 miles, there'll be 4 miles. And take it out to about 5 miles. Okay. Let's do the same thing. Insert. Let's go subtype. Yeah. I don't think they do any actual ground units. But we can throw a Stryker on there. Let's throw a Stryker. Let's do... Let's choose a mortar carrier. Let's do copy. Let's place them at the same intervals. Okay. So we use him as a base. That'll be where the target location is. In fact, I'll need to make sure that he is visible. Unit is auto-detectable. Let's go ahead and switch sides to Russia. I have to take off God's eye view since I won't be able to target. We'll have to click to start. And now he's visible. So we're going to target, attack options, engage, manual. And I'm going to allocate 1 to the selected target. Let's go ahead and switch sides to NATO. Let's go ahead and turn on God's eye so I can see it. And we're going to speed up the view. Drinking some coffee. It's a nice Sunday morning. Nice light topic, nuclear annihilation. Just watched a movie last night about the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was an older movie called 13 Days with Kevin Costner. Very interesting story. Can only hope that world leaders are still as responsible when it comes to conflict escalating to that level. Because just like now, probably just as then, there are people that would be willing to take gambles to risk some sort of escalation crosses that threshold. And hopefully there's still good people on both sides. Be wise enough to know that that is completely unacceptable and must not happen. Because whereas I'll argue that nuclear weapons are not as destructive as popular culture would lead you to believe, they're still destructive to a point that is completely unacceptable for their use. So the world isn't going to end. Humanity is not going to die. But some of their components are coming back online for the initial damage because they suffered damage to their components, but they weren't destroyed. As far as I feel, and one of the reasons behind my channel is that there needs to be an honest assessment of exactly what they do. And we can't go off of hysteria and the Annie Jacobsons of the world and others that are going to tell you just no matter what, the world will end. That's it. Done. Every city is going to be blown up in the United States. Done. You know, there needs to be accurate discussions around it. I've always said the scariest part about a nuclear war isn't that you're going to die and be incinerated in the initial blast. The scariest part is most likely you're going to survive. And then you have to deal with everything that's going to be after that and the long-term issues you're going to run into. Supply chains, food, medical supplies, all those things. So many more people will die in the after effects. Doesn't mean humanity is going to die. Doesn't mean the world's going to end. It means that there will be destruction on levels that are unheard of. Probably since the dinosaur extinction event. Oh, no wonder it slowed down again after that stopping. Just telling you it's made contact. Let's go a little faster. Okay, so clearly the Abrams Underground Zero dead. Let's see what else happens. So as of right now, this is a 1-to-1 thing, so I'm not speeding this up. So they would have very little time to move outside the danger zone. So we lost a Bradley at 3 miles. We lost a Stryker at 3 miles. Lost a Humvee at 3 miles. And we lost Abrams at 3 miles. Let's see about the 4 miles. Think this is going to be... No, we lost the Bradley. I think we lost them all. Okay. So it looks like we lost everything, and it seems like 5 miles is that dividing line. Both the Stryker and the Humvee, which are not nearly as armored as the Abrams and the Bradley. I mean, you know, the Stryker being more armored than the Humvee, that they're survivable 5 miles out. Of course, this is a simulation. This is not the professional edition. This is the off-the-shelf version of Command Modern Operations. So take that for what it will. But, there have been tests done with atomic nuclear weapons against them. Not anything recent because we no longer do surface test or atmospheric test. Everything is subterranean test now, and even those have been many years. But simulation is what you have best to go by. Let's take a look though, see if I can. So we definitely have systems damages. Let's see here. Let's see what kind of system damage we have for the Stryker. Some comms damage. Not destroyed, but damaged. Let's go to the Humvee. And the Humvee actually managed out better. Maybe less components to damage. So there's a rough test there just to show you on a battlefield situation. So again, certainly be very devastating, but you would have high level survivability once you reach, a certain radius out, and that depends on what elevation it's detonated at and the strength of the warhead. For any troops out in the open that are not in a enclosed vehicle, they can go hatch down. For any troops out in the open, though, clearly there's going to be other impacting factors, such as, is there, I want to say NBC gear, but I think they, it's whatever they call it now, CBN or whatever the suits are, chemical nuclear, et cetera. You know what I mean? Do they have those suits nearby? What's the wind pattern? Where's the fallout going to land? So a lot of impact on people that are not in a vehicle, but at least from a armored perspective, troop perspective. Humvee too, for that matter. I'm not sure about the Stryker, but the Humvee, I'm pretty sure is not going to be suitable on its own for protecting against radiological elements and everything. And they're not going to model it, but you could have glass blown out and cuts and damage like that, on the Humvee. But certainly, though, it'd be unlikely for one warhead as well. You would probably see a series of warheads. Now, it's unlikely that warhead would land directly on top of a Abrams. But what you'd see is nearby strikes. But, again, this just makes it convenient to target something. So you can look at it from a naval perspective. And so I've done this simulation. People better than me with access to more classified information than I have done the same thing from a naval simulation where a carrier strike group, and unlike in pictures where you see a carrier strike group and they're all like lined up with one another close in, when they're actually operational, they're not really within eyesight of each other, they're 10, 15 nautical miles out from one another. But a 1 megaton blast directly on top of a carrier destroys the carrier, no doubt. But the rest of the carrier strike group was all right, still combat effective. Certainly there would be some impact to the soldiers on board or the sailors on board, and they could be dealing with wounds and burns and other stuff, but the ships themselves would be survivable. And they tested this out in the 50s. I have a video about it where they tested atomic blast on naval vessels. Of course, warhead 1 megaton would be larger than what they tested with, but again, you can scale that and kind of understand what the effects and impact would be. So again, not the world-ending thing. Now, certainly the loss of a carrier would be a huge, huge deal. But there's conventional weapons that are certainly capable, like China, the People's Republic of China, has naval weapons that are certainly capable of destroying a carrier, provided they're able to hit it and reliably track, target it, and hit it. Those carriers can move a lot faster than you think, but still more than capable of destroying it. So again, there's definitely, it's just easier. So whereas you might need a few, a nuclear blast, you only need the one, and you don't need to be dead on, just close. But it's not something where you can just lob it 10 miles away and expect to have destruction. I mean, it's still got to be within certain blast radius to cause total, sinking of a carrier like that. And so they say close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. Well, it counts in nuclear weapons too. But it doesn't mean it's just an open ticket and you can just fire it wherever and so long as you're in the general vicinity. Because again, I think people don't realize that, but think about it. Think about where you're at. Think about a city or a town 15 miles away and the distance there. So that's where our naval ships are operating. So it's not really a small, it's larger than you think. And the same thing can operate, with units in the field and stuff too, that yes, the destructive blast is going to be quite large. I mean, a 200 kiloton warhead, what is that? How many times? Let's see here. I don't know, somewhere in the vicinity of 10 to 15 times larger than the atomic weapons in World War II. So hopefully this video is educational and somewhat reflective. Like I said, it's a simulation, so it's not only as good as the simulation itself and the data. So it's not going to be perfect, but it gives you something to go off of. And I recommend Georgetown Wargaming Society has a YouTube video. I'm going to put a link to it where somebody, like I said, has access to far more classified information than I do. Delivers a very similar message using a program. When you see it and watch the video, the program does look very, very similar. It's a different program, and you have to have, defense contracting license to be able to utilize it. But it's going to tell a very similar story. So, link's going to be in the description. Highly recommend you check it out. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.